Hello, and welcome once again to the Resilient Life Hacks podcast, where we talk about how to build a stronger spirit, soul, and body so that you can win at life and do what you were made to do. I'm your host, Elizabeth Myers, and we're so excited to have you join us here today. We'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe on iTunes. We're also broadcasting to a YouTube channel and our Facebook at Resilient Life Hacks on the Facebook page. So any of those places, please subscribe and drop us a review. I am so excited today to have with me today Brew. She's an author, just recently published her book on self-care, which is so needed, especially for women and especially this year. It's just so timely. And so I'm just really excited about the things that she has to share with us today. And real quick, before we jump into speaking with her about that, I wanted to let you know of a special opportunity that's available this week. And this is one of those God things I totally did not plan. There was no way I could have planned it, but it just so happens that this week we are launching the open registration for the Christian Women's Self-Care Conference for 2020, which is going to be starting the second week of November, but registrations are open now and it's free. We have like over 50 speakers who will be delivering topics on physical self-care, mental, emotional, spiritual, all the things. And there's really just a lot of great content there and a lot of free downloads and extra bonuses. So if you're interested in signing up for that ahead of time, it's free right now. And the URL that you can go to sign up for that is tinyurl.com. That's tinyurl.com/self-care with Liz, L-I-Z. So you can go there and that'll send you to a page where you can get signed up and you can listen to all those broadcasts in a couple of weeks. It'll be a real big blessing. So without any further ado, we're going to jump in and have our guest here today, as I told you, she's newly published author and really helps women overcome that Superwoman syndrome, try to get it all done to help us through burnout, to help us learn to take care of ourselves. So welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome. I'm super excited.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about how you got into this topic of self-care. How did that come about? That's your thing?
Oh, okay. So I'm coming from a human resource background and working in the corporate world. I always went through cycles of stress and burnout, and I thought it was coming from the corporate world. So I quit my job. I told myself I can't do it. Also because I'm a mom of twins and I have a daughter. So it's hard. It was hard combining the corporate world with my kids, and trying to keep them on top of everything else. Also being a minister's wife. So it was so hard. So eventually I was like, one thing has to go. And of course I couldn't get rid of my kids and I couldn't get rid of my family. So initially I was like, I'm just going to leave the corporate world, take a break and see if that helps. So I did take a break. And it helped for a little bit, but I started my first business, which was a daycare business. And then I started going through the same cycles of stress and burnout. So that is when I realized that, this wasn't really about the corporate world, but it must be something that I am doing wrong, or maybe it's a little mistake I'm making somewhere. So that's when I started digging and researching, and I realized that I wasn't happy because, I wasn't taking care of myself, and I was stressed out, and I was always tired, and I was complaining a lot, and I was yelling at everybody a lot, and I was doing so many things that were not really who I am, just because I was just plain overwhelmed. So then I got my own aha moment, and I got my own I started my own wellness journey, and I realized that women need this because a lot of us Christian women have not been nobody has told us anything about self-care and taking care of ourselves and the importance of, de-stressing and stress management and all that. So I thought that I want to be a catalyst for that. And so I went back to school to learn to become a coach. Again, I said I have a human resource background. So I have a first degree in psychology and I have a master's in organizational leadership and human resource management. But I thought that I wanted to go back to school to learn to become a coach so that I can start coaching other women. So that's just a little bit about how I started and I came into this this industry.
Yeah, that's neat. That's quite a journey. I'm like, you could just stop at the twins alone and that could be overwhelmed. I always really wanted to have twins, and God didn't choose to bless us in that way. I think maybe he knew it would have sent me over the edge. But our last two are only 15 months apart, and I'm like, you know what? That's close enough. We're gonna
Yeah.
just count them
Yeah.
as twins.
Yep.
But something you really said struck me about, especially as Christian women in the church, we're often not told how to take care of ourselves. And the thing that is always it's good, but it's tripped me up, is the joy acronym of Jesus first, and then others, and then you.
Yeah.
But always
Yeah.
putting myself last led me to a bad place. So can you just speak to that a little?
It's so funny you mentioned that, because that's one of the things that I do with my clients. I coach high achieving women of faith. So, one thing I've come to realize, and it cuts across, that almost every woman that I have spoken to, or that I have worked with, or that has even reached out to me, has had the same issue, where we were all brought up to put God first, put our family and our ministry and everything in the middle, and then put ourselves last. And that's the same thing I went through. I was putting myself last in everything, because I was trying to be that virtuous woman. And for me, the picture of the virtuous woman that was given to me was a woman who was giving it to everybody else by herself. So that's why she was a philanthropist. She was doing stuff for her kids, her husband, the community. She was a businesswoman. So she seemed to have it all together. But one thing, verse 22 of Proverbs 31 said she took time to take care of her needs by making her own clothes and making her own bedding. And bedding is very important, because if you live in a place where it is cold, you need your bedding to keep you warm.
Right.
So for me, when the day I got that revelation reading the Bible, I was like, whoa, I am making a very big mistake, because yes, like you said, the joy, I'm busy trying to live up to this joy acronym, and trying to put Jesus first, put everybody next, and then me last, and trying to be this virtuous woman. That in reality, the Bible says it plainly there that she took time off to take care of her needs. It didn't say that somebody made her clothes for her. She made her own clothes. So she took time off to clothe herself. So in the same way, I should be focusing a little bit on myself.
Yeah.
So for me, I would say that, I have come to develop two different types of priorities. The joy acronym has to do with my principles, the principle that I live with. And that affects, how the decisions I make and all that. But when it comes to self-care, I have developed my own self-care priorities, where I've come to realize that when it comes to self-care, I have to flip it the other way, where I'm putting myself first, because I need to be strong so that I can be there for my family and for everybody else. Yeah. So I do agree with you, and it cuts across. A lot of us women, have a challenge with that. And a lot of the women that I work with, we usually have to do a lot of mindset shifts, to get them to realize that I'm not trying to get them to be selfish, and I'm not trying to tell them not to love God, but all those things are your core values, your core values. But when it comes to self-care and taking care of yourself, you come first above everybody else.
I love that. I've never pulled that out of the Proverbs 31 woman. There's been times in my life where I've really not liked her a lot, because I'm like, you've set the bar too high. But, I never thought of it that way. I'm like, oh, I'm not even making my own clothes. I'm not, but that's great. And you're so right. We have the example of, if you're on an airplane and the cabin depressurizes, you have to put your own mask on, because otherwise you'll pass out. And I think we just, like you mentioned, it just feels selfish sometimes. How do you encourage women to let go of that I'm feeling selfish, that me first kind of mentality? How do you help them get around that in their mindset?
So for me, we look at, in every situation, you look at the pros and the cons, and we usually do a tall list, and I make my clients realize, we do it, we go over it over and over again, and we come to realize that they are in the position that they are in, feeling overwhelmed and stressed and burnt out, because they have the mindset of not taking care of themselves and putting themselves first. So usually we try to do the pros and cons. So what if you start putting yourself first? How is life going to start looking like for you? And usually by the time we are able to do that mind roadmap for them to see what a difference it will make when they are able to, start taking care of themselves and putting themselves first, I don't even have to force them, or I don't even have to say anything. They come to realize that they actually need to make a change. It's more of like insights. They get the insight to realize that they have been doing something wrong, and they need to make that change. And making that change is what is going to give them the life that they are looking for. And usually when they get the insights, then that's it. I'm able to encourage them and motivate them to make the changes that they need to make.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So, I mean, like when all my kids were younger, I mean, I didn't even go to the bathroom sometimes for several hours, or if I did, I wasn't alone. So, I mean, for me, like self-care were just very baby steps of just, you know what, mommy needs to go, and that's okay. But what kinds of things do you encourage women to do to take care of themselves? Do you break it down into categories, or?
Yeah, so usually, and that's also, I think that's also one reason why a lot of us women have a negative perception about self-care, because when we hear self-care, the first thing that comes to mind is spending a lot of money and buying expensive stuff for yourself and paying for a luxurious vacation or going to a luxurious spa and doing luxurious stuff. So a lot of us think that is what self-care is. But for me, the self-care that I do with my clients has nothing to do with money. You can still do it and has nothing to do with money. And we break self-care into 5 areas of life. So definitely spiritual life. We're Christians here. So, it's nurturing your spirit. What do you do to nurture your spirit? Do you listen to worship music? Do you pray? Do you study a scripture? Do you do all these things? And a lot of us Christian women are usually really good at that, because we're so busy trying to be spiritual. So that's one of the areas. And then the second area of self-care is mental self-care. This has to do with growing your mind, learning something new, because the mind hates to be left dormant. So if you're not doing anything to stimulate your mind and grow your mind, you're going to feel like you're out of sync, like something is wrong somewhere. So that has to do with, even if it means signing up for a workshop, you were talking about that workshop, a workshop or even a webinar or something, just any topic of interest to you, you want to do it. And then also it has to do with calming your mind. So what do you do at the end of the day to calm your mind, to relax, to get your mind to just go back to being silent and quiet, so you can actually even go to bed and have a good sleep. Exactly. So usually it could just be doing some really deep breaths. It could be meditating on the word of God. I love Christian meditation, when it's the word of God and you just, breathe it in, breathe it out. And then it really helps. It could be anything. It could be worship music. It could be your evening routine prayers. If that's what calms your mind, then that's fine. And then we have emotional self-care. That has to do with how we deal with our emotions. And a lot of us Christian women, it's a taboo for us when we talk about emotions, because a lot of us, maybe we were brought up to think that talking about your emotions makes you not carnal or too emotional. But we really need to deal with our emotions, because sometimes, emotions like anxiety, depression, anger, sadness, even happiness can sometimes become a negative. Because if you don't deal with your happiness properly. So all these emotions need to be channeled properly, in the sense of, the scripture says you cast all your cares and your burdens onto God, and then, he's going to give you that peace of mind. So yes, after we've prayed about it, sometimes you need to talk to somebody. You need to sometimes you have to even go to a professional if it's too much for you. So if it means getting a coach, getting a therapist, a psychologist, or even your pastor. Some pastors are very good, are gifted with counseling. But you need to make sure that you're talking to somebody who is not gonna lead you to do the wrong thing, or, gonna fool that emotion, but would rather allow you to deal with it objectively. Because, the emotions have to do with our soul. So our mental and emotional self-care has to do with our soul. So we need to take care of our soul, not only just the spirit. And then we have physical self-care, and that has to do with our body. So that has to do with what are we eating? What are we drinking? How are we dealing with ourselves? Are we healthy? Are you going for checkups? Usually when we mention physical self-care, there's a lot of misconception, because people think it's going on a diet and losing weight. But that's not what it's about. It's about you being healthy, because I know people who are very skinny and are not healthy. So it's more about living a healthy lifestyle. And then we have social self-care, has to do with our inner circle. Because one thing is that, our relationships, a lot of our relationships are chosen for us. You're born into your family, so you can't choose your family. You can't choose who your mom will be, who your dad will be, who your uncles and sisters will be, because you were born into that family
Right.
for a purpose. Even at work, we can't choose who our colleagues are. We can't decide that we want to work with this person or that person. Even at church, we
Mhm.
can't choose who the church members are or who we have to minister with, because people show up when they want to. But the one kind of relationship that we have the power over is our own personal relationships and
Mhm.
our inner circle. And even that has to do with who you date, who you
Mhm.
marry, who your friends are. So who are the people in your inner circle? And a lot of us women make a lot of big mistakes with that. Because, last weekend I was talking to the ladies in my group coaching, and we were talking about these areas of self-care. And I realized a lot of us women have a problem with social stuff because we always end up trying so hard to be accepted by the wrong
Mhm.
people.
Yeah.
But we want to make sure that who we are choosing as our inner circle and who we're choosing to hang out with and to speak into our life should be positive people. They should be the people who are positive, have positive things to say.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying that they should be fake, because if they're fake and they're not telling you what is wrong about you, then that's
Right.
wrong. But they should be able to correct you in love,
Mhm.
correct you in love, work with you, be happy to, work with you to become a better you, and speak positive things. Because sometimes, after we've gone to work and we've had stressful interactions with our bosses and all that, there should be that one person that you can call on the phone to even have a 5-minute conversation with.
Mhm.
And then at the end of the day, you are so relaxed. And it's like they just had one sentence to say to me that just, took away all that pressure and all that
Mhm.
stress that I had.
Mhm.
So these are all the areas of self-care that I do with my clients. So it's more of like a holistic approach.
Right.
And, you can engage in all these things without even spending a dime.
Mhm.
And for
Yeah. Definitely.
everybody, yeah, and for everybody, it's different, so your personality plays, your who you are, what your upbringing comes in, because what could be a form of self-care for somebody could be a stressor for somebody.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
usually with my clients, what we do is that we go through this and we try to figure out in each area of self-care, what are you going to put there? So you create a plan for yourself and then we start
Mhm.
to implement it. Yeah. So
Mhm.
these are all the areas of self-care that I do with my clients.
Yeah. Yeah, those
Yeah.
are great. And even like with the spiritual one, that's an obvious place where we need to start. But I know in the past too, I've even put that on a to-do list. Like this
Yeah.
is another thing that I have to do and I need to do it well. Or whereas, now my perspective is shifted on that. It's more like if I don't brush my teeth, I don't feel good. I haven't, and
Yeah.
not that I don't want to compare like prayer with brushing my teeth, but you know what I mean? It's not a thing on my to-do list. I'm like, this is a thing I need to do that fills me, that
Yeah. Yeah.
satisfies me in ways that nothing else can. And I recognize when it's missing,
Yeah.
I miss that. But if we put it as that thing on our to-do list of, oh, did I read my Bible today? Then it just
Yeah.
becomes another burden. So I
Yeah.
think it's all in how we look at that. And I know
Mm.
for me as like a perfectionist, I tend to put these things on God that he doesn't really feel about me of, oh, I've messed up again, or
Oh
didn't get
yeah.
this right, or I fell asleep while I was praying, when he just wants to have a relationship with us. He just
Exactly.
wants us to show up. Yeah.
Yep. And I'm so happy you mentioned that, because, a lot of us were brought up in the sense that, yeah, when you wake up in the morning, it's like religion. But
Hmm.
like you said, I have also come to realize that it has to be part of me.
Hmm.
So I make time for prayers. But when sometimes I'm not able to maybe pray for so long, because usually maybe you want to pray for an hour or two straight up,
Hmm.
how about you take this with you? So whilst you're driving in the car, how about you have some good worship music or some good prayer going on in the car and you're also praying along with it? Or
Hmm.
even when you're doing your chores or you're cleaning, you
Yeah.
know, worship God whilst you're
Yeah.
doing it. And for me, that's what has worked for me, because being a
Hmm.
twin mom, it can get crazy sometimes.
Oh yeah, I
But
imagine.
when you don't see, like you said, like a chore, like something you need to, like one other thing you need to do, you rather see that
Hmm.
it's something that's fueling you,
Hmm.
then it becomes part of you. So you create the atmosphere around you
Hmm.
wherever you are. So for me in my car, I always have the worship going on.
Hmm.
When I'm working, if I'm not on a Zoom call or on a webinar or a podcast and I'm filming something, I always have the music playing. It's playing in the
Hmm.
background whilst I'm working. And it's funny because when it's playing, when that preaching or that word of God is praying, sometimes it's just a simple worship song that's playing in the
Hmm.
background. I'm like praying whilst I'm doing my work,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
so it becomes all part of the whole thing.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it maybe makes life better, honestly.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So as you help women like work out these things, do you go through them, systematically, like one thing at a time, or do you like ask them where they need help? Do you start where they need help most, or how does that work?
So, I use the self-care wheel. I adopted that from the Wheel of Life. It's a
Hmm.
coaching tool that I was taught when I was learning coaching. I mean, when I was in coaching school. So I have the wheel of, I mean, the self-care wheel, which has all these 5 areas. And in the beginning, we do it together,
Hmm.
where the client on a scale of 1 to 10 will assess herself, where do or how satisfied are you with this area of self-care? And usually that gives a better perspective of, where they are at in
Hmm.
relation to self-care. And then the client can then decide where they think they are lacking so much. So we can put a little bit more focus on it. But
Hmm.
honestly, I don't do one without the other because I believe it's a holistic
Yeah.
approach. So what we do is that we create a system where you decide at least start with one activity in each area of self-care, and then we then look at the client's schedule and we look at the loopholes, because I also do the drains and fillers system where everything that you do as a woman either drains you or fills you up of
Hmm.
energy. A lot of people use energy, but now I don't like using the word energy anymore because that could mean different things to
Yeah.
different people these
Hmm.
days. But you're losing some form of strength. Let me use the word strength. You're losing some
Hmm.
form of strength. So well, you need to make sure that you are scheduling enough fillers on your schedule
Yeah.
to make up for the energy and the strength that you're losing
Hmm.
whilst you're going about your everyday activities. So usually these fillers are the different activities of self-care that you have agreed to do or you have
Hmm.
identified as your fillers. So we fit them in the schedule where at least, I say, let's look at even just 7 days a week, choose 5 days and just try to fit one activity in each area of
Hmm.
self-care on each day,
Yeah.
and start with just the baby steps. Even if you start with 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the afternoon, 5 minutes in the evening, that's 15 minutes of self-care. And
Hmm.
so whilst the client starts to do it and they get in the groove, then we start to build on it and make it bigger. So at the end
Hmm.
of the day, even though you think that you're lacking in one area, you want to focus on just that one area, we are able to actually get in all these different types of self-care without you even realizing it, because we
Yeah.
start little and then we grow it.
Hmm. I've
Yeah.
always thought of it as kind of a bank account where you make deposits and you have withdrawals.
Yep.
And when we start making more withdrawals than deposits,
Yep.
bad things start happening.
Ooh, that's a very good analogy. Then you
Yeah.
get an overdraft.
Yeah. And I've been there, guilty. I've done that. And that's kind of what has led to my area of ministry too, is because I'm like, wait a minute, I can't,
Hmm.
I can't keep going on that way. But so you have a course for overcoming the Superwoman syndrome. You want to tell us some
Yes.
more about that and how that works?
So that's a group coaching program. I usually don't like big size groups. So usually the maximum I like to do like 5 women because we want to have that intimacy so I can, focus
Hmm.
on your issues. So it's 6 weeks together where we're going through the whole system. We start with looking at what Superwoman syndrome is, what the consequences are, which is usually burnout. We do our burnout symptom check, see where we are at in relation to burnout. Then we do 4 major things. I believe those are the 4 major keys to getting over the Superwoman syndrome and attaining balance in life. So we do self-care, which is we've been talking a lot about, where you're able to create your own self-care strategy based on everything we've spoken about already. And then we do boundary setting. We talk about how you can set boundaries, how you can say no, batter training. We talk about different strategies and certain boundaries. And then we talk about delegation. How can you delegate some of your responsibilities so that you can, let go of some of the overwhelm,
Right.
So we go through that and we look at different strategies. And as we are doing this every week, we are meeting once a week, sorry,
Hmm.
for 1 hour. And then you're able to create a strategy based on everything that we share together. And then we also talk about self-esteem, because at the end of the day, self-value and self-esteem is very important in this
Hmm.
area of life, because the things that we value as women, we take good care of it.
Yeah.
That's why we wake up and we're cleaning our homes and we are polishing our new shoes and our
Hmm.
bags, and we're trying to make all these things look good because we've spent money on them and we value them. But we are more valuable than all these things. So the last thing we do is self-esteem,
Hmm.
where we are trying to get ourselves develop balanced self-esteem. So it's not just about thinking you're on top of the world, but it's realizing that you're not a perfect woman, but God also gave you skills, abilities, talents, capabilities. And even though you have some imperfections, you can actually focus on these strengths for success and try to work on the things that you can work on. And the things that you can't work on, you just leave it to God,
Yeah.
and realize that God is going to take control of it. If he wants to change them, he's going to change them. But if they never change, you learn to live with them.
Yeah.
So I call that the balanced self-esteem. So you're not only looking at the positives, but you're looking at your life in a more balanced way and viewing yourself in a more balanced way. So these are 4 major areas that we work on in my group program. And at the end of the whole thing, usually I would have a quick 30-minute session with you to go over your whole strategy plan and what you've decided you want to do, moving forward. And it's funny because a lot of people start with a group program, and after they've developed the strategy, they realize that there's a lot to implement and they can't do it all by themselves. So they end up coming to work with me one-on-one to help with the implementation, because, it's one thing developing a strategy for yourself, which you can do with a group program, but it's another thing actually having a coach in your life to help you to attain all these things and make these changes in your life. Because when you have a coach in your life, then your coach can work with you one-on-one, focus on you, push you forward, move you forward, to achieving all these things. Yeah. So that's a little bit about the Overcome Superwoman Syndrome program. My October batch started, I think this week is going to be our 4th session. And the next group is going to start in November.
Yeah, neat. So people can get to that on your website. Do you have a link for that?
So usually I just have people send me a message, send me an email or a message, go to empoweredforbalance.com/contact. There's a form over there where you can just fill your name, your email address, and send me a quick message and say you're interested. Or you can also reach me on Facebook and Instagram. It's Empowered for Balance, all one word. Just send me a DM. You can just write I'm interested, or just I want balance. You don't need to write a whole email.
Here's my life story.
No, what happens is that you send me a message, I reach out to you, and then you can book a free session with me, a free discovery session, and we can talk some more to see what's a good fit for you. Because sometimes a group might not even be a good fit for you. Another program may be a good fit for you. So we look at that and figure out which program or which of my offerings is going to be a good fit for you.
Oh, that sounds like that would be a blessing to a lot of women out there. So I'll put that link down in the show notes. I'm curious, this year has been rough on a lot of people in a lot of ways. And I feel like we get picked up from one wave and then something else kind of hits us. And so how have you seen that play out with the women that you coach? What kind of different things have you seen this year or seen more of? How is that impacting our burnout?
So one thing I'm realizing is that a lot of the women that I'm coaching this year were burnt out when they came to my program because of their viewpoint of everything that's going on. Because yes, we're going through a pandemic. It's bad. It's not easy,
Right.
but you can actually make the most out of what's going on by viewing it from a different point of view. And that's one thing I'm realizing is that a lot of people are burnt out and stressed out. And I remember one of the women joined and she's like, well, I'm lonely. I'm in the room. I don't have kids and I'm lonely. And I'm like, so the first question I asked there was that if nobody is reaching out to you, are you reaching out to people? And then she was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's a matter of how we view what's going on. It's hard. It's not easy. People have to homeschool their kids for their first time whilst trying to work from home. So it's a lot of overwhelm. But if we're able to look at it in the positive, in the sense of trying to find the light in everything that's going on and try to figure out how we can live with it so that we don't feel too overwhelmed and we're not constantly obsessing about the fact that it's not right. I believe as a coach that we can actually make the most out of what's going on.
Yeah.
So that's
definitely.
what I am seeing. Yeah, that a lot of people are really overwhelmed. I was in the beginning. I was beginning to get overwhelmed, and I was like, well, I need to start focusing on the positives of this. And that's why I was like, okay, I'm just going to finish up my coach training program, and I wrote this book during the pandemic. So this is
Yeah.
not even a book I had even thought about writing.
Oh,
I
really?
actually started, yeah, I wrote it. I was like, well, I'm just sitting at home. I'm just gonna,
Okay.
focus on this and channel my energy into this.
There you go.
And, so I think that it's a matter of, and that's what coaches are there for. We are
Hmm.
there to help people see the positives in situations and figure out a way around the obstacles. Because I believe that COVID-19 is an obstacle.
Hmm.
And so we have to try to figure out how can we go around this obstacle and still make life seem livable, even
Hmm.
though it's not the perfect situation that we wanted,
Right.
but we can actually go around it, go
Hmm.
around this barrier and this obstacle and make
Hmm.
the most out of the situation.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I say a lot is we can't control what happens to us, but we can
Mm,
control how we respond to it. And I think that
exactly.
goes back to the mindset that you were talking. That's actually what I'm speaking about. In fact, at
Really?
the women's self-care conference is mindset, and how we can shed lies that we believe in, and embrace our truth in Christ,
Yeah.
and how that really just radically shifts the way we view everything, and makes us more resilient.
Yeah.
So on your book, I love the cover, by the way, too. It's very pretty and
Yeah.
eye catching. But so does that kind of cover the similar topic that you do in your coaching, or is this a different kind of avenue, different way of looking at self-care?
So this is all about self-care, everything self-care. And I wrote this book because I realized that a lot of the women that I was talking to about, even people that would see my posts on the internet or on social media, thought I was talking about superficial self-care. So that's when I realized that there's a lot of misconception out there
Yeah.
about what self-care is. So this is just a book about self-care. And I wrote it for the busy Christian woman or the busy woman of
Hmm.
faith because you remember I mentioned 5 areas of self-care, and the
Hmm.
only form of spirituality I can write about is my faith.
Right.
So then it's just to make people realize that, hey, there are going to be Christian principles in the
Hmm.
book about self-care. So it talks
Hmm.
about what self-care is, why self-care is important. There are some, there's brain science in it.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
research in it about the importance of self-care and how stress affects our productivity and
Hmm.
our success in life. And
Hmm.
then it also talks about the 5 areas of self-care, which is a balanced self-care method. It talks about the drains and fillers self-care. And then it also walks you through doing the commitment, making the
Hmm.
commitment to actually start living a more holistic life.
Hmm.
And then also it talks about the barriers of self-care, which has to do with changing our self-value mindset, changing our
Hmm.
mindset about what self-care is, and realizing that self-care is not a luxury, but it is a necessity.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then it also talks about boundary sets and how you can set boundaries. And it is
Hmm.
a journal style workbook. So after
Hmm.
every, I don't know if you can see, but after every
Hmm.
chapter, there are journal activities that you can do
Yeah.
that walks you through the whole thing. So it's not just a theoretical book, but it's more of like a practical book. So it's like a workbook. Sort
Yeah.
of. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you're actually going through the whole process of developing your own self-care strategy and, developing strategies to overcome all the barriers of self-care and, making the commitment and all that.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that's what it is about. And I like the paperback version
Yeah.
because you can actually write in it.
Yeah. That's
When
great.
you get the ebook, you'd have to get a notebook to do the journal
Hmm.
activities. Yeah. Because I feel like if you don't do the journal activities, you're not going to get the best benefit
Hmm.
from the book. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a pen and paper girl anyway.
Yeah.
It's like, I've tried to, I know the ebook thing is more efficient. And I mean, we move a lot, but you can see my bookcase
Yeah.
back here, and
Mhm.
that's only part of it. But yeah, I prefer the paperback books anyway. But that's great that it's, you can really own the material that way, and people can really make it theirs, and
Yeah.
really say, this is what I learned from this chapter and how to apply it. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. And
I really like
my
that.
team and I are working on my self-care planner. So there's actually a planner that's going to go with the book.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, and it's going to be a paper planner, as in a real
Hmm.
book planner, a 1 year, but it's undated. So anybody can start it at any point in the year. And it's
Hmm.
focused on self-care. So after you've read the book, it's for long-term implementation. So
There you go.
after you've developed your strategy, how about you start doing this every day and every
Hmm.
week and working on it and scheduling your self-care on your schedule and all that. So it's going to be a very efficient
Yeah.
tool. Yeah.
Yeah, that accountability is really good.
Yeah.
And as I think for some women, part of where we get tripped up on this is sometimes, we don't feel worth it. Like there's that aspect of, I feel selfish, but then I think too, there's women who struggle with their own self-worth, maybe
Yeah.
because of past experiences or relationship or things, maybe where they weren't valued. as much as they should have been. And so they've taken that on themselves of, I don't deserve this.
Yeah.
And so cutting through those barriers too. And just, I think it's so important to see ourselves as Christ sees us and to
Yep.
believe that that's
Yep.
true and not
Yep.
what that other person said.
Yep. 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 That's very true. And that's why I do a lot of self-value and self-esteem mindset stuff, because that's a big challenge for a lot of women.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for chatting with us today. Is there anything else that you want to share, or like closing remarks or something that we haven't mentioned yet?
All I want to say is that, the truly empowered woman has balance in her life. So as Christian women, I know a lot of women are fighting for women empowerment and all that. But the thing is, the most important empowerment you can give yourself is taking care of yourself, because that's what gives you the strength and the ability to make the right decisions and set the right goals, and achieve those goals. So as women, we need to take care of ourselves and not neglect ourselves, because we are our greatest assets. Because if you have everything in the world, you have the best house, the best car, the best shoes, the best everything, and you are not well inside, not even just physically, but even if you're not well mentally, emotionally, it's going to affect everything, because you can't really enjoy everything you've worked for. So as we are trying so hard and fighting for empowerment and trying to achieve our goals and everything, let's not neglect ourselves.
Yeah, that is a great word for us. Thank you so much for sharing. So much of what you said just really resonated with me, and I'm like, yay, yes, this is exactly what we need to hear. So thank you for joining us today. And Amma's book, Self-Care, is available at Amazon and Barnes and Noble and everywhere online, right?
No, for now it's in Amazon. We're trying to get it into
Amazon.
Barnes and Nobles, but for now it's Amazon. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I forgot. What's the subtitle? Self-Care.
For the busy Christian woman, make time for self-care and feel alive again.
Yes, I love that. So yes, you can go get that at Amazon. She just launched it this past month. So congratulations. That is awesome.
Thank you.
And we're going to go ahead and wrap up here for today. Thank you so much for joining us today and for listening to these great tips and techniques. I pray that you will take some of that with you and apply at least one thing, or even reach out and connect to her so that you can get some more coaching and help on this, or read the book. But thank you again for joining us. And if you haven't had a chance already, please hop over to iTunes, give us an honest rating. That really helps us get this message of hope and healing out to those hurting souls in the world that need to hear that. And so we appreciate your partnership in that. Thank you so much. And I will see you again next week.